A millionaire disguised as a drifter walked into one of his own five-star restaurants and ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, just to see who would try to break him first. He expected humiliation. He expected arrogance. What he didn't expect was a black waitress slipping a note into his hand that would stop him cold and expose something far darker than rude service. But before that note was written, before the glass was ever poured, Ethan Caldwell stood alone in his penthouse overlooking Chicago, staring at a cedar trunk he had not opened in decades. Inside were the clothes he used to wear when he slept in bus stations and alleyways, before he built Caldwell Reserve Group into one of the most exclusive hospitality brands in the country. The flannel shirt was frayed at the cuffs, the denim jacket stiff with age, the boots cracked like dry earth. He had kept them not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of the promise he made to himself at 24. If he ever had power, he would never let someone be treated as less than human in a place that carried his name. That promise had been tested before, but never like this. 3 nights earlier, an anonymous email landed in his private inbox. No greeting, no signature, just a grainy video clip filmed inside one of his flagship restaurants, the Lure House. The footage showed a poorly dressed man being mocked by diners while a manager motioned security to drag him outside. Laughter followed him all the way to the curb. Beneath the video were 3 sentences. Asterisk, you preach dignity. Does it apply to everyone, or only those who can afford it? Asterisk, Ethan had replayed the clip until the sound of laughter felt like sandpaper against his nerves. Reports from the Lure House had always been excellent. High revenue, glowing reviews, impeccable wine lists. On paper, it was flawless. But paper had lied to him before. You could send compliance officers, his assistant Marissa Klein suggested gently as she watched him pull on the worn jacket. You don't need to go yourself. Ethan met her eyes in the mirror and rubbed a streak of dust across his cheek. Audits reveal policy, he said quietly. I want to see character. At 7:20 p.m., when the Lure House was glowing under crystal chandeliers and humming with the soft swell of a live violinist, the front doors opened and conversation faltered mid-sentence. The host's polished smile froze. Men in tailored suits paused mid-laugh. Women in diamond necklaces subtly covered their noses. Ethan walked in slowly, shoulders straight, gaze steady, carrying nothing but the quiet confidence of someone who had survived worse than disapproval. The hostess blocked him with strained politeness, but before she could speak, General Manager Brandon Hale appeared, impeccably dressed, charm sharpened like a blade. Sir, Brandon began smoothly, I believe you may be looking for a different establishment. Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick fold of cash. Table for one, he replied calmly. And bring me your most expensive Bordeaux. The words rippled through the dining room. Brandon hesitated, calculating greed against prejudice, and greed won. Of course, he said tightly, leading Ethan not to the center tables bathed in chandelier light, but to a cramped corner near the kitchen doors where the scent of dishwater occasionally drifted through. It was the table reserved for guests they wanted gone quickly. Ethan sat without protest, noting every detail, the glances, the whispers, the way a busboy was warned under his breath not to get too close. He had seen these dynamics before when he had been on the outside looking in. What he hadn't expected was the sharp awareness in the eyes of the woman assigned to serve him. Maya Brooks had worked at the Lure House for 4 years, long enough to recognize cruelty disguised as policy. She moved toward him with controlled professionalism, water pitcher steady in her hand, but when she met his gaze, something flickered between them. His posture was wrong for a defeated man. His silence felt intentional. She poured his water, thanked him softly, and stepped away, yet her instincts refused to quiet. Minutes later, as she passed near the wine station, she heard Brandon speaking in a lowered tone to the sommelier. Open the 82 Bordeaux, he instructed. The one we flagged. The younger man stiffened. Sir, that bottle was heat damaged. It's been unstable since the refrigeration failure. Brandon's expression hardened. Pour it. If he complains, who's going to take his word over ours? A quiet, dismissive laugh followed. Maya stopped mid-step behind a pillar, heart slamming against her ribs. Heat-damaged wine could cause more than a bad taste. If bacterial growth had occurred, it could lead to severe illness. This wasn't about embarrassment anymore. It was punishment. She watched as the deep red liquid was uncorked and poured into crystal, flawless in appearance. deceptive in presentation. Back in the dining room, Ethan observed the shifting body language around him. The woman at table 12 whispering complaints about standards, the man at the bar recording discreetly on his phone, the manager's tight smile stretching thinner by the second. When Maya approached with the bottle and glass, her expression was neutral, but her mind raced. She understood the risk of interference. Brandon had fired staff before for less. Yet as she set the glass before Ethan, their eyes locked again, and in his she saw not confusion, but recognition, as if he already suspected something was wrong. "Your Bordeaux, sir," she said clearly enough for nearby diners to hear. Ethan studied the wine, lifting the glass slightly, noting the faintly sour edge beneath its aroma. He did not drink. Brandon watched from across the room, impatience simmering beneath forced hospitality. The violinist's melody continued, delicate and oblivious, while beneath the surface of velvet and crystal, something corrosive spread. Maya stepped back, pulse racing, knowing what she had overheard and understanding that silence would make her complicit. Ethan held the untouched glass in his hand, the deep crimson reflecting chandelier light like liquid rubies, and thought about the promise he had made to himself long ago. No one would ever be degraded in his establishments, not for poverty, not for appearance, not for daring to walk through a door that claimed to welcome all. Yet here he sat, being quietly tested by the very system he built, unaware that within minutes, a small folded note would change the entire course of the night. The Bordeaux remained untouched in Ethan Caldwell's hand, the deep crimson liquid glinting beneath chandelier light, while across the dining room Brandon Hale watched with growing irritation, waiting for the humiliation to run its course. What Brandon didn't realize was that someone else had heard his quiet instructions in the wine station, and she was deciding whether to risk everything. Maya Brooks moved between tables with trained composure, but her pulse was racing. She had clearly heard him tell the sommelier to serve the compromised 82 bottle, the one flagged after a refrigeration failure, the one that could make someone sick. If he complains, who's going to believe him? Brandon had said it with a smirk. Maya knew exactly what that meant. At Velour House, reputation protected management, not outsiders. If the poorly dressed man at table 17 fell ill, the story would be simple. Unstable vagrant causes scene. No investigation. No consequences. She slipped into the staff restroom, locked the door, and stared at herself in the mirror. Losing this job wasn't theoretical. Her 10-year-old son's school fees depended on it. Her rent depended on it. Brandon had fired staff before for questioning him. But if she stayed silent and that man drank the wine, she would carry that guilt far longer than unemployment. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Character cost something. Maya tore a small strip from her order pad and wrote quickly, hands trembling, "Don't drink it. The wine is compromised. They're doing this on purpose." Asterisk asterisk. She folded the paper tightly and hid it in her palm. When she returned to the dining room, the tension had thickened. Guests whispered openly now. A woman near the center tables complained about the atmosphere. Brandon lingered near the bar, pretending calm, but his eyes never left Ethan. Maya approached table 17 steadily. Ethan looked up at her, his expression unreadable yet sharply aware. As she set down a fresh napkin, her fingers brushed his hand, and the folded note transferred between them in one fluid motion. "Enjoy your evening, sir," she said evenly. She walked away without turning back, her heart pounding. Ethan waited several seconds before lowering his hand beneath the table. He unfolded the note carefully. The message was blunt and unmistakable. His jaw tightened as something old stirred inside him. Not surprise, but recognition. He had known cruelty dressed as policy before. Slowly, he set the wine glass down untouched. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The Bordeaux remained full. Murmurs spread through the dining room. Brandon finally approached, smile tight. "Is there an issue with the vintage, sir?" he asked smoothly. Ethan met his gaze. "I'm considering it." Brandon's expression flickered. "It's one of our finest selections." "I'm sure," Ethan replied calmly, making no move to drink. Suspicion sharpened in Brandon's eyes, and they shifted toward Maya. He sensed interference. Deciding to regain control publicly, he raised his voice. "Maya Brooks, step forward." The room quieted instantly. Maya approached, composed but pale. Brandon folded his hands behind his back. "We've received complaints that you behaved inappropriately toward this guest," he announced loudly. "You're suspended pending review." Gasps and whispers rippled outward. Maya held her ground. "I did nothing wrong," she said steadily. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Brandon turned slightly toward Ethan, expecting silence, expecting compliance. Instead, Ethan rose slowly from his chair. The movement alone drew every eye in the restaurant. He looked at Maya briefly, then at Brandon, then at the untouched glass of wine. "She did nothing inappropriate," he said clearly. Brandon stiffened. "Sir, this is an internal matter." Ethan's voice lowered, but it carried through the room with quiet authority. "No," he replied, steady and certain. "It isn't." Brandon Hale didn't understand the shift in the room until it was too late. The moment Ethan Caldwell straightened to his full height, the illusion collapsed. The illusion that he was powerless, that he could be embarrassed into silence, that a manager's title outweighed truth. Ethan calmly reached down, removed one worn boot, and from inside the sole pulled a slim black phone. Gasps echoed across the velvet-lined walls of the Lure house as he pressed a single button. Within seconds, the front doors opened and Marissa Klein entered with 2 attorneys and private security. Her voice was sharp and composed. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Ethan Caldwell, founder of Caldwell Reserve Group." The dining room fell into stunned silence. Brandon's face drained of color. Ethan held up the phone. "I've recorded everything tonight," he said evenly, "including instructions to serve compromised wine to a guest you assumed no one would defend." The sommelier, visibly shaken, confirmed it under the weight of the moment. Diners recoiled from their own glasses. Security stepped toward Brandon as his denials unraveled into desperation. Police sirens grew louder outside. An hour later, the restaurant stood empty. Brandon was in custody. Staff had been dismissed pending review. Only Ethan and Maya remained near the window where the night had begun. "You knew you could lose everything," Ethan said quietly. "Why do it?" Maya met his eyes without hesitation. "Because someone once didn't protect you," she replied. "And I wasn't going to be that person." 3 months later, the Lure House reopened under new leadership, with Maya Brooks as general manager. The chandeliers still shimmered, the wine still flowed, but a small framed note hung by the entrance as a reminder. "Don't drink it. The wine is compromised. They're doing this on purpose." Asterisk asterisk beneath it, a plaque read, "Dignity is not reserved for the wealthy." On reopening night, when a man in worn clothing stepped uncertainly through the doors, Maya greeted him first. "Welcome," she said warmly. "Table by the window?" Across the room, Ethan watched quietly, knowing the test had never been about catching corruption. It had been about discovering courage. And he had found it in the one person everyone else underestimated.